Your attention, please. Paul and Alex are required to proceed to the gate immediately.
What?
No way.
What is happening here?
This is the last call for the Layovers podcast.
Really?
Come on, man. This is our thing. We got this.
Oh, yeah.
And we made it.
Of course, geeks.
Flight 75 to Paris Charles de Gaulle.
Finally, it took us 75 episodes to get here. For a good reason, we've been putting it on. It's like, trying to find reasons not to do something you really don't want to do.
We've talked about it. We hinted at it so many times during our crazy run. 75 episodes. I cannot believe we're 75.
No, me neither.
The reason we chose it is, of course, because we had to do it at some point, because it's episode 75, so it's a round number-ish, and also because France won the World Cup.
Yeah, it feels like an appropriate juncture to, quote-unquote, celebrate this airport.
Well, you know what? I was there last week. I did a trip. I lied in a previous episode. I said I was about to go with Cathay Pacific. I didn't lie, but I changed my mind and I ended up going with KLM and Air France, starting and landing at the final leg in Charles de Gaulle. I mean, now that I've done Frankfurt, you know what? I don't know. Maybe Frankfurt is actually worse. We'll talk about that at the end of the episode because it's quite an interesting airport, actually. France has won. England didn't. Sorry,
they did not. No, they did really well. It was nice to see the media being so kind. I think that's probably the best word to the team the day after they lost the semifinal to Croatia. It was great to see. It was a great World Cup, and it took me several days to figure out what to do with myself after it all ended.
Exactly. And for those who don't like soccer, you'll be relieved that it's obviously our last ever episode to talk about the World Cup until 4 years in the future. Yeah. But in Croatia, you had a citizenship of Croatia because you went to the squares. I'm sure you were a little bit gutted.
Yeah, it was a heck of a final, though.
Like the rest of the World Cup, it was really good.
For the neutral fan, it was quite a spectacle. So yes, I was sad for Croatia, but I think France had some great players that deserved it, and it was cool to see. Was Didier Deschamps the third player manager to ever win the World Cup as both player and manager? Something like that. Wow.
Well, yeah, he deserves it. And you know what? If I had put money at the start of the World Cup, France would have been the horse I would have bet on, because
really,
I think they left at least like 7 to 10 players that could have been world-class talent. True. Not even taking them with them in Russia. I was really rooting for small nations. It was nothing against France because I love it. So I would have loved Belgium, who lost also in the semi, or Croatia. France was very good at reading the adversaries, at creating a strategy, and that's why they won. I will not stop hearing about it for the next 4 years, obviously. And I know we have some French listeners. I'm sure we still love you, but please do not hammer that every time we see you.
You can do it a few times, but not all the time.
Yeah, actually, it was very fun because the following day after the defeat of England, I was at T5 Heathrow. And at 10 a.m., the signs still had the hashtag "It's coming home."
Oh,
and at 10:05,
they
they realized, oops, like somebody went to change them. So it was kind of endearing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I like that. I think that Heathrow have gotten good at getting involved in subtle ways like that. The Star Wars thing was neat, and it was nice seeing them get engaged. So. Yeah, absolutely. Great World Cup.
And there was a tweet. Now I forgot. I don't have the link. By the way, the show notes are like 10 episodes are out. I'm so sorry, guys. I will maybe have time in August. There was a Gareth Southgate, for those who don't know, he's the coach of the England team, lookalike. And the cool thing for Aviation Geeks is actually a BA pilot. The guy actually even apparently showed up in his job, so as a BA pilot, dressed like, with, the exact same way like Gareth would actually dress on the bench. So that was super cool.
That is cool. Yeah. And I guess sales of waistcoats from M&S have spiked by 90% or something like that. He's turned into quite the trendsetter, for better or worse.
Exactly. So one thing about the World Cup before we move on, because it's related to aviation, I had a question. People were saying, I cannot watch the live games. What are the airlines that are providing live TV? So I looked it up, and I mean, although the World Cup itself has ended, it still means that you can watch sports. I don't have, and you probably do have, maybe all the coverage of the US U.S. airlines, but internationally, including some of the U.S., is Aeromexico, Air Italy, so that's Meridiana, American Airlines, ANA, Emirates, Etihad, Garuda, Hong Kong Airlines, Lufthansa, Qatar, Thai, Turkish, and WestJet. These are the ones that for sure have live sports on. So it's also Wimbledon. I mean, that's also over, and Federer didn't win, for crying out loud, and other sports. So if you're interested, you have to fly one of these 13. I think in the US, there might be others as well. I'm not sure.
There are quite a few of them that have either
live
streaming or have streaming to the device. A lot of airlines, I have to admit, over here have that feature or functionality.
Well, we'll see when we record our episode. I don't know, God knows, 284 in 4 years. Maybe all the actual airlines will have some kind of ways to watch the World Cup.
I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, when we see the rollout of Wi-Fi in Europe, clearly Europe won't have anything.
Yeah, jeez.
We are recording today the 30th of July, so just at the tail end of July. Alex is actually in California. What time is it for you?
It is 12 minutes past 7 in the morning.
Oh, wow. Did you have your coffee yet?
I am quietly taking it off mic, lest I fall asleep at the keyboard.
Well, I woke up at 5 this morning, and it's 3:30 here in London, because I am in London. As I said last episode, we're not traveling that much. You did one travel. You went to California. We'll talk about that in a few. You also did another travel to Seattle, as we mentioned. The thing is, guys, we already know the content of our next episode. So we decided that we're going to put a lot of the US related news for the next episode, which means that, hey, you'll have to wait for next episode for Alex to tell us about how was for him flying Alaska.
Yeah. No comment.
My God. I mean, you can see glimpses of his comments on Twitter, because you had a few snarky comments when you were flying them. But you were not too harsh.
No, I wasn't. I tried to not be as harsh as perhaps I could at least justify in my own mind being.
There was Daryl Smith on Twitter. Okay, Daryl, you have a great name, but your handle is at Daryl S81193422. So I don't know if that's a phone number. It's
zip code.
It's maybe a code, maybe some ASCII. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, he said that he was about to board the longest flight in the world on Qatar, so probably the one from Doha to Auckland. He said, feed up, plenty of time to catch up on our episodes, and all the past episodes all downloaded and ready to go. Daryl, I mean, we appreciate that, but I don't know, let us know, how was that very, very long flight with our voices? Because I'm sure we made it even longer. Tell us, Daryl, if we made your trip actually better or worse. Since you're having coffee, let's talk about coffee for a minute. I don't know if you've seen that story, Alex. Turkish. One of the board member of Turkish Airlines, I don't exactly remember what exact position, but he's a board member, so a very important person, let's say, was on a Turkish airline flight. And a crew member comes to him and asks him, how would you like your coffee, sir? And he flipped out. Completely flipped out. You remember that he did the peanut girl on Korean Air? That style of flipping out, saying that it's unacceptable that a crew from Turkish Airlines wouldn't know how an executive board member would like his coffee without having to ask.
Give me a break.
Yeah. This is crazy, right?
The entitlement is staggering.
But look, that's not the end of the story. Turkish created 100-person cabin crew specialized to cater for management. So now, if you are a Turkish airline management or executive board member, like this guy was, well, you'll have a special trained crew serving you so that they know, I guess, how do you like your coffee. So not only it's entitled, but then Turkish actually followed up on, created this special task force, I guess, for people that are very important. I don't get it.
What a complete waste of resources and training and time. Ugh, that's just gross.
And obviously, when the story was leaked out to the press, what did the Turkish government do? They did a press ban. on the story.
Of course.
Yeah, well, look, I love Turkish Airlines and I love Turkey, but this is not a story that shines a very good light on the airline
at all.
Still talking about Turkey because, the other big story is, will the new airport open in time? It doesn't have a name yet. For the moment, they call it the Istanbul Grand Airport. That's not a definite name, and I'm not sure it's going to be called the Erdogan Airport, maybe.
Hey, you know what? You joke, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case.
So there's less than 100 days before it opens, and there was an article in the Financial Times. One of the reporters went there to see what's going on, and basically nothing is ready. There are still goats, still pasturing where the runway should be.
What?
So it's like, there's stuff being built. Let's say it's not like a plane, nothing, but it's really, really, really tight. There's a very cool quote from one of the officials for AC. Says, "You know the Italian Job? That's a movie, guys, if you don't know it. This is kind of like the Turkish Job." So they're hacking it together.
They're not good.
So they won't even have a dry run of the software system just 2 weeks before they actually open the airport. So they're not even sure it's going to work. It's crazy.
That has literal and figurative disaster written all over it.
To be honest, I really hope they do it. They achieve that.
Yeah, of course.
And you know what? Turks and Greeks were a lot of similarities when the 2004 Olympic Games were about to start. It was a month before and literally nothing was ready. We painted the lines of the 100 meters probably 10 minutes before we actually ran it or something. So, I'm giving them and they really need a new airport. So I really hope at least something can be dealt with. There should be 2 runways accommodating up to 80 or 90 million people at opening. So that's really, really big. There won't be, and that's the other thing, there won't be any fast link train or anything like that to go there. The officials saying, yeah, but cars are enough. Well, most people, though, unless you're Turkish and you live in Istanbul or you visit Istanbul, most people use Turkish as just a layover airport, so probably that would work. I really hope they did make it, but that would be really,
it would be
really
a miracle.
tight. And also because your father had that experience, they will shut down completely the current Ataturk airport for 12 hours, move everything to the other one and open it. So that's also will be something quite on a grand scale, and I hope everything works there.
I admire any logistical effort like that, be it aviation or otherwise, where you overnight you move something from one area to another, and to most of the public it feels relatively seamless. I just can't even wrap my head around the planning and the orchestration necessary to pull something like that off. So I wish them the best too. I hope it goes well.
14,000 vehicles will be going from one airport to the other to transport everything.
It must be quite a spectacle to see all these tugs driving down the middle of Istanbul,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the current airport is south, and that new one, guys, if you go on Google Maps, is northwest, which is probably the only part of Istanbul that isn't built. So, they made a good choice because that's the only one that they can actually build. I think in the end, it will be 4 runways, expandable to 6, I think. So there's really a lot of room. That's why they chose that
That's
place.
good that they've thought. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, to Heathrow's, defense, it was built however many decades ago.
At that time, they know the city would be next to it, right? It's absolutely. And to finish off that, one other quote, which I love, it says, on the 31st of October, so that's Halloween, we are going to be a Twitter trend, positive or negative. So we talked about security in the last episode, and not going to go through this time because otherwise you'll be bored, guys. But there's a new regulation that is about to take place, at least for the UK, I think for the entire European Union. Powder, so that includes baby powder and coffee, I just mentioned Turkish coffee, will be banned from hand luggage. I think for baby powder, there will be maybe 200 grams or something that will be allowed, because otherwise, maybe if you want to change your baby diapers, it might be not great. So leading up to my question, how was your trip going to California with your kids, and especially your very young girl?
BA did a good job. And, that type of regulation, I think there's always exemptions for baby formula, and airport security are very understanding. They go through a sort of, not battery, that makes it sound really overwhelming, but there's a few tests that they run to make sure that everything is as it should be for baby equipment, but they're generally very good. And that was certainly the case with us for T5, because we can't use the first wing security at T5 because I have 600 children, so they and they're very apologetic about it. They always sort of say, "But you can only bring in one guest, and there's 5." And I don't push the subject at all.
Yeah.
We could use it for check-in, and I had my bike with me. We had a stroller. We had a car seat, and I didn't have to take the big bulky items to the special baggage area where you put in the
Oh, I see. Wow.
They did it for me. They did everything. They were very kind. They were very patient. They made sure we had the seats that we wanted, because we usually sit in a slightly unusual configuration compared to most other normal families. So very diligent. Going through security was slower than it normally is, but it was also starting to ramp up to summer. Maybe a 10-minute wait at most. So nothing to cry about. We didn't even try and go into the lounge because my kids get bored. So we just
they cannot have champagne.
Yeah, they don't. It's not nearly as nice. And but like I think we've mentioned it in previous episodes, there's a reasonably good indoor play area in Terminal 5, and they're much more interested in doing that. They wanted ramen as well, so they had all of their itches scratched. But the flight over was fine. It was we flew into San Jose in California, which is served by a 789. And it was
nice.
it was nice, and the crew were outstanding, absolutely outstanding. In particular, one member of the cabin crew called Kate, who I just want to mention by name. She was so fantastic to not just my wife and my daughter, but the entire family, making sure the boys were loaded up with sweets. I mean, I wasn't as appreciative of that when they started bouncing off the walls, but they loved it. I really did appreciate it, because she made sure they had everything they wanted. If they didn't want the meal, she went and kind of found something in business class to bring back to them. She made sure that my wife had everything she needed for the baby. It was really, really impressive. And I've noticed that, I don't know what's changed at BA, and I'd be interested to see if you've experienced this as well. Something about the soft product, especially on short haul, but now it appears on long haul as well. Something has changed.
I agree.
There's a tone change. There was a slightly weird lapse in professional protocol with one of the flight attendants. Just in a conversation I was. He was a really, really nice guy. I went back to the galley with my daughter just to calm her down and settle her a little bit. But he was like telling me all these things. I'm like, I feel like you probably shouldn't be telling me all of these things. I won't repeat any of them, and none of it was juicy or in any way detrimental to. He wasn't giving away trade secrets, but I was like, this is slightly weird. But the rest of it was outstanding. I was so impressed by them, and I don't know if you noticed this as well. I don't know when the last time you flew long haul on BA is, but then they've done something to the IFE. Perhaps based on feedback, I don't know. But the depth of the IFE offerings is much, much greater now. Like, they had things like movies that people of our generation were like, you know what, I haven't seen in a long time that I wouldn't mind kind of zoning out and watching. Like 15 of those movies, like Napoleon Dynamite and Hot Fuzz and stuff like that, where you're like, I've seen this movie 15 times. I'd be happy to watch it another 100 times just out of the corner of my eye, which is great. It's exactly the kind of content you want on the IFE.
Yeah.
And Cathay, I mentioned, I think on the last episode, are really good at that as well. So, it was a fine flight. It's a long day flight. It's boring, but it was fine. Hat tip to BA for really doing a great job of just making what can be, frankly, a nightmare situation, flying day flight, 11 hours with 3 kids. Very easy indeed. I liked it. And of course, flying into San Jose is a joy for an international flight, because there's still hardly any international flights there at the same time. So you breeze out of immigration, you go into this adorable baggage hall where there's like one belt, one of which failed to function. So they were hand delivering all the bags, but our plane was literally parked outside. So they were just taking the bags off the plane and passing them through this door into the baggage hall. So yeah, it was great. Kudos to BA. Thank you to BA for making the trip over good. We'll see what the red eye is like on the way home, but you've set an expectation, BA. Don't let me down.
Actually, you know what? I took BA to go to Paris, which is the airport of this show, to actually do the trip that I'll mention later. And then, of course, as well, when I landed in Charles de Gaulle, back with BA to London. So very short haul, because that's less than an hour of actual flight time. Especially on the way back, I remember the crew was out of this world. I just had flown Air France, which is a really good product. And, I was like, okay, I'm going to do a short haul. I just want to go home. It was like, it was the first flight in the morning, so 7:50 a.m. or something, leaving from Charles de Gaulle. You know what? It was fantastic. Nothing about, it's not the seat. There's no IFE. There's nothing, it's just a 319, or I think it was. But the crew, especially the head of cabin, I don't remember what name they used, the pursuer at BA, and I don't remember his name. I'm not as good as you. Was absolutely fantastic. Like, it's probably the best experience. I just had made very good flights, but this alone made me like, well, there you go. That's why I like BA.
Yeah, I think they've done something.
I agree.
And actually, one of the things that the chat mentioned to me it was about how they are segmented into, I can't remember the words that he used. BA Travels will remind us, I'm sure. You've got mixed fleet, which obviously that means they work on multiple different types of airplane. And then you have, what did they call it? World, perhaps? And they have completely different management, completely different unions, was what he was talking about. And I think there's a general, one group is happier than the other. And I think that shows.
We've heard that during also all the union, negotiations, that some unions were unhappy because they were not treated the same way, etc. So there's a lot of, I think it has to do with seniority, it has to do with contract, it has to do with a lot of things. We're not sure. Maybe, I don't know if they choose, how do they mix the staff within the aircraft itself? Are they mixed at all? I don't know. But like you, the past 4 flights, and none of them were long haul, were short to medium haul with BA, I've seen a difference in how they behave. Not that they were bad before, right? I'm not trying to say, but clearly maybe because they've heard all these negative comments about how BA is turning out, they had to maybe at least do something on a soft product to.
It's a point of differentiation, isn't it, at this point? Because
it is.
Short haul in Europe they're all the same now. And until somebody drops a lot of money, time, and energy into updating the hard product, or at least doing something like, Wi-Fi or some sort of IFE, or making a seat that is, especially in business class, much, much better, then you can only compete on the soft product. And BA seem to have invested in that.
How was your boarding experience at T5? Because for me, it was striking. I don't take BA as much as you do, but now not only do they have these group things that all the US listeners will be very used to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or A, B, C, D, E, I don't know which, depending on which airline you fly. But they've also done like these very weird routing with a lot of cords. So you're supposed to enter one way for group 1 and another way for group 2. And that was at least my case, which I get it, is to avoid, confusion on which line you're supposed to take. But that takes a huge space in front of the gates now.
Yeah. And
did you have that?
Well, my wife had the dreaded Quad S on her boarding pass. So she was she was subject, which I had weirdly on my last trip to the US. Means you're subject to additional screening. It's only for US bound flights, and within the US, of course.
Yeah.
So she was paged to the podium pretty much right when we got to the gate. And then when they realized that we were family, they took us all through.
Oh, so you were before the others anyway.
We were before the others anyway. But they were excellent. They were calm. They were well organized. We were at the gates. We were at the C gates at T5, which don't have a lot of space in front of them. So they have to be, they have to do 2 things. They have to be very efficient, and they have to rule with an iron fist when it comes to people being in the right place at the right time. And they did say that. They said, we board by group numbers, and we'll send you back if you're not in the right one, because we don't have enough space.
Okay, yeah, because in the A gates, the main terminal of Terminal 5, guys, if you've ever been to, there's a bit more space, and they had created this kind of very strange layout, which works. I'm just saying it's totally new. And also, by the way, all of us, including Group 1, which was different before, so if you're business or you're gold, you go through the automatic gate. You scan your boarding pass and you enter. There's no more manual, unless, again, quadruple S, or if you need assistance, or stuff like that, you still will have your passage through an actual person. Otherwise, they just say, oh, starting group 1, suddenly the gates in front become green, and that means you can scan and you go into the airplane. So they really try to automatize that as well. Anyway, enough about Heathrow, because I know that some of our listeners are, they don't really know Heathrow. The one cool, because since we're there, when I had that story, I was there and watching this very strange new layout, and there was this other guy, like you, Alex. I'm first at the gate, obviously, also because my app would tell me before the actual board, so I was already there. So I was lining up, and there was this person behind me, and suddenly this person taps on my shoulder, and I had my headphones, and he taps on my shoulder because actually I was blocking the way for the pilots to actually enter the aircraft. But funnily enough, he says something. He says, yeah, you should let them pass unless you're qualified to fly a 320. And I laugh back and I say, well, I'm not, but maybe you are. And he answers, yes, I am. And I'm like, what?
Oh, wow.
Turns out the guy used to be a 320 and other aircraft pilot for BA for like at least 20 years. And now works, because you just mentioned seat, that actually triggered a story, works for BAE, which was just acquired by Rockwell, which itself was just bought by United Technologies. He actually sells seats around the world.
Wow.
So we started chatting about aircraft seats, et cetera, et cetera. But not only that, he has another business. And he told me every time, and Alex, you've experienced that more than me, the olive oil that you've tried in first class or business class in BA, that's him.
No way.
He's showed me a picture of the actual, the fact, it's not a factory, it's almost a farm in Italy where they produce it. And he's the guy who goes there and actually makes the deal and makes the olive oil be in first and business class for BA. So that was a fantastic experience, because for 20 minutes, instead of just listening to my headphones and whatever, I was chatting about airlines. Actually, we exchanged cards. I think he lives in Dubai now, but also in the Philippines. Super cool guy. I love the kind of stories.
Yeah, and where else in the world other than an airport can you have those kind of serendipitous, interactions with somebody who? I love stuff like that. What a cool meeting.
Yeah, he actually, in the Philippines, the building he lives is literally the next door where I used to live. So, like literally, like it's really like in the next block. Like I could see it from the window. Anyway, so that was a fun story. The big story, because we haven't touched it upon, because we recorded. Although you guys have heard the episode lately, we recorded 3 weeks ago. Boeing actually bought Embraer. Yeah. I mean, only the civil part. It's not a pure buyout, but come on, it's a JV.
Yeah, exactly. That's the euphemism they use. I can remember if it was a strategic alliance or a JV, but yeah, that was JV.
Joint. I think it's a JV, and it's owned 80% by Boeing, which means that, Embraer, of course, owns 20%, and Embraer is the little guy in that acquisition, but still, it's valued, the 100% are valued at $4.7 or $4.8 billion, which means, I know it's a bit of a joke and not very serious, which means that Airbus was able to buy a Bombardier for $1, or Canadian dollar actually, and Boeing got to fork $4 billion to do that.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I'm sad. I'm slightly relieved that it wasn't a complete buyout, and I think that because of the Brazilian government's hesitance to sell off the whole thing, especially the defense component of what Embraer make. Mm-hmm. This was probably the structure they came up with. And it feels like a defensive move by Boeing, given the market consolidation that we're seeing at the moment. But I'm interested to see if they take a similar branding route to what Airbus did.
They just actually, we said it last time, but they actually just flew the first A220-300, so it used to be the C Series 300. They flew it with the Airbus colors and the thing like a week ago or something. Yeah.
So I don't know,
but I don't think so. I don't think so. At least not in the close future. Now, in the future, it's possible. There's even rumors that actually they will tap into Embraer resources to develop that new mid-market aircraft, the 797.
Yeah.
And also the fact that there's low-cost production facilities in Brazil with less cost than the US. So that will also be an advantage. It's not only about the aircraft. Of course, they are important. They are, Embraer are very good aircraft, E70, 90, et cetera, but also for the actual production, the knowledge, the blueprints, et cetera. So that could be something. And to be honest, when you think about it, Boeing has a very much centralized way of developing aircrafts compared to Airbus, which, has a very decentralized way of creating. It uses a lot of OEM, whereas Boeing is very centralized. Of course, the 787 was one of the first to actually try to decentralize it by using parts from all over the world. And I think they realized that they need to be maybe more decentralized. And again, it's not because Airbus was smarter. It's just because it's the European Union and everybody needed a piece of the cheese to make it happen, right? It seems to be working for nimble operations, to use a term that all management consultants love. It seems to be a bit better. So maybe that's also with the direction they're going by acquiring someone like Embraer.
Yeah, it makes it. No, I think you're right. And I think it gives them an opportunity to have conversations with potential customers that they didn't have access to in the past. So somebody that is either a pure Embraer operator or an Embraer and an Airbus operator, now they have a much easier way of having those upsell conversations, or at least a conversation with them now that they have that stake in Embraer.
Yeah, and conversely, actually, it also gives reassurance to those who buy Embraer, and especially Bombardier, because that was one of the biggest problems with Bombardier. A lot of airlines were interested in the product because it's a great product, but they say, well, if Bombardier fails, we don't have any spare parts, everything goes to crap, right? So suddenly now it's Airbus, so their trust that it will last. And the same thing for Embraer. Embraer was probably in better shape than Bombardier, but it gives also the kind of reassurance that you have like this worldwide network of, second parts, worldwide network of like maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. So everything makes sense. I mean, we don't like that because it reduces the number of players, but for a commercial point of view, maybe we'll actually end up seeing more Embraer and more ex-Bombardier in the year.
I think that's very, very likely. It's gonna be interesting to see how it all plays out. There's so many possibilities here.
Yeah, we'll talk about the founder of JetBlue who's creating its new airline in the next episode, but he bought like 220s actually. So there you go. Interestingly, when they did that flight, so the first ever flight with the new name Airbus, it's really literally the same plane, guys. There's no difference. But interestingly, in the speeches they made that day, and I picked up a few quotes here, it's quite interesting. One thing struck with me. First of all, they call it, the 220, it's a baby 350.
It certainly looks like it.
Yeah, we kept saying the baby Dreamliner. Of course, you cannot say Dreamliner, but maybe
that'd be awkward.
They also say that they're going to transport all their interior, the new with like all the LEDs, the Airbus airspace, they're going to adapt that for the 220,
cool.
the two versions. And the one thing that I actually found very interesting, and I didn't know that, is that the base model is the 300. So the 100 is actually a reduced version of the base model, which means that we could see one day a 500 series or a 700 series.
Wow.
And that's really like shooting the stars into the future, but that could be the foundation for the follow-up to the 320.
I'm interested. Yeah, well, okay, so you just answered my question, which was, and we've talked about this in the past where any manufacturer consolidation conversation comes up, which is how do they manage it so one model or type isn't cannibalizing the sales of another? But it sounds like if they're, as you say, looking that far into the future, that this could be the platform for something that replaces the 320 series, or is the sort of the next natural evolution in it, then yeah, I can understand it. There are always going to be customers for those smaller, higher frequency type airplanes. We've especially here in the US, you look at all of the smaller airlines that operate the express services for basically all the majors here. They live and breathe on those types of airplanes. So there's obviously a market, but I'm always interested to look at the strategy for these big manufacturers of how they all slot into one overarching menu, if you will.
Well, talking about the MRJ, they're really running out of luck. I mean, they were at Farnborough, so Farnborough just happened. It's the big air show here in the UK. They had an accident or something.
There was, I can't remember what the specifics were, but they weren't able to do their flight display that they had planned to do at Farnborough because something had happened.
The plane was hit by a truck.
It really is cursed.
I mean, it's unlucky, of course. Yeah, it's cursed. I mean, it's, oh my God. I really want, because again, we say that in every episode, but we love having new entrants like the Sukhoi, et cetera, et cetera. So the MRJ Mitsubishi should be one, and they delayed. It's too heavy. The revision stuff, etc., etc. Too heavy for the scope closes in the US, by the way. But not only that, but then when they're actually ready to do like a display flight at one of the biggest air show in the world, boom, he gets hit by a truck.
Yeah,
you're like, what?
I feel like perhaps they've missed the boat here.
Then again, if you remember. When the Dreamliner was developed, they had all these problems as well. It was a disaster. The first series of Dreamliner, the teen ones, are still a disaster. They're too heavy, etc., etc. They were not on spec. Not saying that it's the same, but saying that maybe, I mean, it's Japan. They will try, and they'll end up figuring something. There's no way that Japan cannot do an aircraft.
No, you're right.
At least I don't know. But you know what? I think it was one of the managers, directors, I don't know his title, for Mitsubishi said, well, the Bombardier C series had to be bailed out of public money and then acquired by Airbus. Mitsubishi won't need to.
Burn.
So they're very confident that they are.
Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I know they have commitments from a few airlines, but I'm excited to see it actually go into production.
So now the race is between what will be first, MRG or the new Berlin airport?
Oh man, I wouldn't put my money on either of those.
I think the MRG might be first, actually. I think so. And Istanbul as well will be first. The other thing that have you seen, since we're talking still Farnborough, have you seen the Airbus Beluga XL, this huge whale
It's very
thing?
cool.
It is massive. Look it up, guys. It's like it's not really pretty. Let's be honest.
And they know they're not trying to make it look all businesslike and cool, even though it has a very workhorse role. They've painted an actual whale face on it.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's such a nice thing to do.
And isn't that the one that will carry parts for the 350 or something like that, or 330 Neo?
I think so.
But that's why it's so big.
Yeah, and this time it's based on a 330. The previous incarnation was based on a 300. So I think it's much more efficient. It's neat looking, and I like planes like this because it's so bizarre.
It is. Another thing that was bizarre, is the story you sent me, was that the U.S., this is not a terrorist plot, the U.S. was wanting or willing to blow a Saudi plane. This is not a John Le Carré plot here. I think they're doing that for test
they
reasons,
acquired
right?
I've forgotten about this. They'd acquired a 777, an ex-Saudi 777, with the intent. Was it the Army? It was given to the Army.
Yeah, the Army. You're right. The Army
to blow up, just to test the rather sinister idea of what happens to an airplane when something detonates inside of it. At various points. And they've done these tests in the past, and there was a lot of talk about should we redesign the baggage containers to have this sort of honeycomb material on the inside that would absorb at least some of the impact of an explosion. But yeah, it was. I don't know if they've done it yet, but it will be interesting to follow because will they tell us what the learnings are? Probably not in the specifics, but I don't even know if I want to see the footage. There's something horrendous about seeing an airplane destroyed in such a violent manner. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And the article, which we'll put out on Twitter, is worth reading as well.
Yeah, it's on thedrive.com. There was this thing that I think was it done in the 70s. It's the footage you can see on YouTube if you look it up. They had, I don't remember, was it 737 or 757? Maybe they had made it crash. So they remote controlled it.
707.
Oh, 707, even older then. And they make it crash. And it's really like it looks like Hollywood, but it's not. It's the plane crashing with full fuel load to see. They had cameras inside. They wanted to see the spread of the fire within the aircraft to see what should be done to enhance security. I mean, if you're afraid of flying, just don't look the video up, guys.
It actually precipitated a lot of changes in the composition of aviation, of jet fuel, the design of fuel tanks, the design of fire suppression systems, because it sort of crash lands. And it's spectacular in all the wrong ways, but it changed, revolutionized, frankly, so much of how how those systems are designed. It also taught fire crews a lot about how fire spreads and where the kind of the weak points are, if you will, both in the fire itself.
Yeah, that was the point.
It was definitely worthwhile. Yeah, but it was a remote controlled 707 that they crashed. I think somewhere here in California they did it. Harrowing footage, but we learned a lot.
I wasn't able to join you this time in California because we have a long-standing plan with Alex to go to see the Mojave, to see the actual, the cemetery of planes
One of
together.
my favorite places.
So not this year, but probably next year, because I don't want to see a plane crash, but I want to see that because it's very close to where you live for the summer. I'm very envious. Although we're still having a good summer in the UK. I mean, we had 2 days of rain. It's back to, it was like 38 Celsius the other day in London, man. 38. That's 100. That's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, guys. It's
the UK is not built for that type of weather.
No, not at all. Another story you just triggered. You're so good, Alex, because I don't have the notes in the right order, and every time you say something, I'm like, it triggers another story.
That's what happens after 75 episodes.
There was this crazy story in a Chinese airline. I don't remember now because, again, I don't have it in front of me. So in China, let's say that the rules for vaping in the cockpit are very lenient. So you're not supposed to smoke anymore anywhere. You're not supposed to vape also because, vaping, especially the cheap ones, have batteries that could explode like a Samsung S8, right? So vaping is forbidden anywhere. Actually, they say it on most of now the current safety videos. But the pilots on this aircraft were actually vaping, one of them or the two of them, I don't remember. And because there was a little bit of a smoke in the flight deck, he switched a button, which was supposed to be just to remove a bit of air. But actually what he did was a wrong button and pushed all the smoke back to the main cabin, which triggered an alarm. So the guys didn't know what the alarm was, but it was like a smoke alarm. So what they did, they descended super rapidly, thinking there might be a fire. The oxygen masks dropped down, so everybody put the oxygen masks. When they realized that it was nothing, and then I hope people that listening to this will see the enormity of the stupidity of this, they said, "Oh, well, good. Now that we're sure there's nothing, let's go back up on our original flight path and continue the flight." Guys, masks only have 15 minutes of oxygen. It's not even oxygen. It's actually like this powder, chemical reaction or something, right? That means that if actually something had happened, then there was no more masks.
It's extraordinary.
I mean, once you do it once, you're not supposed to go back. You're supposed to land because the aircraft...
I cannot believe this story. It's I fear that with the rapid expansion of air service in China that's happened and is still going, you will have incidents like this. And I'm sure that we're not hearing about, every 10 for the ones that we do hear about. So you just hope it's silly things like that. Although this isn't necessarily silly, but no one was hurt.
No one's hurt, and it's just like I'm thankful almost that we're getting the stories because it means they're not being like completely banned by any government. Right? Means that hopefully they learn. Hopefully they being get a sanction these pilots for vaping. I don't know if that airline allows it or not. Maybe it allows it, but at least for once they had the emergency. Well, now that you have the emergency, don't go back up full pressurized with no actually oxygen mask if actually something will happen in the next 10 minutes or an hour. So, well, at least we got the story, which means probably somebody in China got the story.
Well, that's the thing. The prevalence of cell phone cameras and social media mean that generally these things are not going to go without publicity, for better or worse.
Clearly. For better, I was about to say sometimes for worse. We're receiving too many stories, guys, by the way. I know I do that in every episode. We want to apologize for not quoting every single one of you to giving shout outs because we're receiving too many stories and we have to, because we only have an hour and a half, an hour, 40 minutes, and not every story. But I've seen stories of like this girl that I think she started to pee in the galley because the plane was taxiing and the lavatories were closed. I think it was Wizz Air, which is very appropriate, peeing in Wizz. But anyway. Anyway, we cannot cover all these stories, but man, sometimes I wish there was no cameras for that kind of stuff.
Horrendous.
Okay, but since I'm shout-outs, a few shout-outs, but before, neither Alex and I do have Android phones, but I've heard from one of our beloved listener that Google Podcasts, which is the equivalent of Apple Podcasts or iTunes, our show is there listed. I know our show works well when it's downloaded, but our show doesn't stream apparently. Anyone else who's using Android, can you try Google Podcast, which is the official Google Podcast app, and let us know if Layovers works well there. Because I went on my dashboard on Google and it seems to be okay. And I don't know what I should do. But if I hear that many of you have issues listening on Google Podcast specifically, not any of the other Android apps, please let us know and I'll try to figure out what I should do. Because a lot of people are on Android, so we don't want to exclude those. So a few shout outs, I said. First, a few reviews from Benny Boy 456. This is a funny, interesting, and witty aviation podcast. We're a perfect presenting match, Alex. You learn a lot of little things along the way. And again, he says, I am currently going through their amazing back catalog. It's always a treat to listen to a new episode. So again, someone who goes to the back catalog. Guys, we're really not proud of our first episodes. No, actually we are. It's fine. Sam Holt 123 says a fantastic podcast, relevant and humorous. Thank you so much. And probably the best title ever for a podcast review, apologies on behalf of Hong Kong.
Intriguing.
I love that one. Minecraft FBI 2 says that, hello, I'm working towards becoming a commercial pilot in the future. Oh, wow. We should have you as a guest one day. And I was shocked to find that nobody had sent you a review from Hong Kong, so I fixed it.
That's kind.
He's at Suleiman 77W, so it means that you're probably going to fly the 777ER, I hope for you. If you want to see more of Hong Kong and me trolling. Yeah, so you're not trolling. Please feel free to send us stories. Very, very, and thank you so much for having written that. So now we have a review from Hong Kong. Very happy, very, very happy. There's on Twitter at Parky Parks says that another brilliant episode. That's our last one to listen during my car commute to work. And inspired me for some great travels in the past 12 months. He's been to Croatia, Rome, Oslo, Naples, Budapest, Dubai, Hyderabad, Florida, Dubai, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur in the next 6 months. Yeah, well, see, he's charting as much as we do now.
Yeah, jeez.
I don't know if it's a good thing to inspire people to travel a lot, but at least to travel, yes, you should travel. So that's for sure. Open your minds, you do that. And his name is Gavin Parks. And what else? Oh, yeah. And Sunil Karkara, so at Glucode, one of our early listeners, still listens with much dedication to our show. Says he was listening to the last episode on board Air India 183 from Delhi to San Francisco. That's one
I was going to say, that's a long
actually.
flight. I flew out of San Francisco recently and saw that flight sitting at the gates at the international terminal. And I was just figuring out how the heck did they do that flight. That's just amazing. I'd be very interested, actually, if you have time to send us some notes on how that was.
I've said it already, but clearly Sunil, because he flies clearly more than we do, and like very different product than we do as well, although he does fly as well some BA products to here in London. We need to have you on the show because we need to understand how you like all the other aircraft and airlines that we've never seen. You might not have a chance to see, although you told me, Alex, that now you're free. What did you write me the other day? That you're finally free for this year?
I'm going to hit, with the flights I already have booked, I'm going to requalify for gold on BA, so I can try some airlines outside of the One World Alliance if it makes sense. So I've been glancing in other directions, and I'm looking forward to experiencing some new products.
Yeah, that's what I do because I'm gold until 2020. I'm sorry, Alex. So there's also at Rollofunk on Twitter. How did you know I was secretly hoping for a new episode for tomorrow's Helsinki to Narita flight? Well, of course we know. We know everything. We know when you guys are flying, so that's why we put the episode. That's special dedication for you. And he saw at Haneda. So he must have done both Narita and Haneda as me, and I'll come to that in a minute. He saw the new Lufthansa livery on the 350, so I've never seen that. And he says that I know the new style has been dividing opinions. Personally, I find it calm and understated. I think he's right. It's great. It's great livery again. Since I'm on Lufthansa, I had a few questions about the trip report in brackets I did last episode. People asked me, did you have a pajama? Yes, there was a pajama in first class Lufthansa. It was actually one of the best pajamas I ever had. It's really good. It's really classy. I still think that I should do maybe one day a blog post and taking pictures of every single one pajamas, and maybe yours as well, and we can compare notes and saying which was the best of all the pajamas we ever gotten. My favorite is still Asiana, but mostly for the style. It's colorless and it's very stylish. It's still my favorite. But this one is very good. People also ask me about the amenity kit. So it's no longer the small Rimowa. You remember, like a very small Rimowa, like also Thai Airways does. It's another simple black cube in leather, but very well done and very well appointed as well. So that was actually good. The one thing I'll mention here, Lufthansa is probably in first class the best eye mask I've ever tried, even better than my favorite, which is Emirates first class. It's really, all the eye masks usually are like an 8, like an infinity sign. So like this one has, you look like some kind of Flash Man or something. It's like super big, but so it really covers all potential light coming in, but very delicate how it falls. And I actually sleep with it during the summer here in London because I have, the sun wakes up at 5:30 or something. So it's actually, it's that one, guys. It's one. I'll do maybe the same. I'll do a post with pictures of all the eye masks, because Alex and I must have a huge collection of eye masks and amenity kits. Anyway, what else? You had a friend Anton at Derloose on Twitter. He said that one thing I meant to mention after the ORD episode, Chinese airlines are mopping up the pilot ranks here in Russia as well. But instead of offering competitive wages, Aeroflot used their clout to make authorities delay critical certification paperwork. So basically, that's how they block pilots from Aeroflot to go to China.
It seems like shooting yourself in the foot.
And since we're in Russia, an interesting story, because I just read that the other day that Air Belgium, is that called? So Air Belgium is one of the new startup airlines in Europe. They do Brussels to Hong Kong. Their first flight, which was like maybe 2 weeks ago, had a whopping 15 passengers on board. 15, yeah. Well, to be honest, I want to fly that, because having an aircraft with only 15
very
be
comfortable,
awesome.
And you would get very good service, I would imagine.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. Primera Air, whatever the new airlines are doing, they will just cancel the flight, because, guys, I'm not saying do not fly them, but they're canceling every single flight that has not enough passengers. So I'm not sure these very attractive airfares stick to Norwegian, guys, as long as you're in business, at least. So, and that was interesting, because I don't know if you know, guys, I know that Alex does, that to go from Europe to Japan, for instance, or Hong Kong, all these airlines have to go through Russian airspace. Russian airspace is a very awkward airspace. It's beautiful scenery, but it's awkward because since it was USSR back when they signed this big agreement about over territory flights, so the rights of flying over other countries. They never signed that. So they signed bilateral agreements, and they allow airlines to fly ad hoc. And their policy is they allow usually one single airline per country. One exception being the UK. Both BA and Virgin have this authorization. But that means for Norwegian, it's a problem, because SAS already has the rights. And Norwegian is it's been months trying to get, because, they fly now to Singapore, but that can go below Russia. They're trying to get other destinations in Asia. And of course, if they have to avoid the Russian airspace, that just, the flight becomes super, super long and maybe not economically viable. They cannot get it. And the Russians are really adamant of, like, Air France has it, that's the only airline in France. Lufthansa has it, only airline in Germany. SAS has it, and sadly SAS is like 3 countries, so there you go. I think Norwegian even tried from Ireland, but they said because at Aer Lingus, I'm not even sure they're flying that direction. But for the moment, it's not flying. It's a strange situation, because really that airspace is it's very, very
and
valuable.
they know it. They know exactly what they're doing. You almost wonder if there's, I don't know, maybe this is the case and they're just being obstinate, but if there's some sort of neutral third-party arbiter of things like this. It feels like there should be.
Yeah, normally there is. But if I'm not mistaken, because you just mentioned money, if I'm not mistaken, it could be, guys, look it up. I think it's $100 per passenger that flies over Russia.
That is a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Yeah, that's a lot of money, man. Which, by the way, tells me, so why would they say only one airline? I get maybe the political implications, because that's a chessboard. It's also like, so they can put political pressure on a country saying, we won't allow anyone else, or we won't allow you anymore. And that, okay, I mean, this is political stuff, and we're not going to go there. But purely economically, more airlines, more money for
Yeah,
them.
it's there's that seems a lot more political than financial. The cynic in me says.
Yeah, I think they threatened to cut KLM's rights to do that when Amsterdam Airport said that they wanted to reduce the number of slots for Russian landing rights. They said, okay, if you do that, KLM loses its rights to fly. So then I think Amsterdam backtracked.
Childish.
But I mean, it's fascinating to see that it's an awkward story. That look it up, guys, if you're interested. It's very interesting by matter of comparison. Back in probably just after when this treaty was signed, I think it was just at the end of the Second World War. It would take you, I think, 36 hours to go from Europe to, let's say, Japan. There was even a slower route that would took you almost 90 hours to get there. Like, man, we complained about 12 hours. 90 hours with like stops, I think, in, if I remember correctly, Rome, Beirut, Calcutta, Bahrain, Karachi, Yangon, Bangkok, Manila, and then they would arrive in Japan. It's insane.
Oh my god! Yeah, we should not complain as much. Can you imagine doing something like that?
Still talking about Asia, because you spotted that. You remember the founder of Hainan Airlines is dead. Pretty young, actually. I don't remember his age, but he was below 60 for sure. I mean, of course, Hainan is not in the best shape. Lots of debt, let's put it that way. But I don't think it was foul play. But you saw the aircraft that could have been the aircraft that was bringing him back.
Yeah, he was killed in an accident
China,
in the south of France. He fell. In idle moments, I occasionally open up one of the plane tracking apps and saw a plane doing a rather unusual route basically over my house in the UK. And it was a VIP configured 787 owned by the HNA Group, which is the parent company of Hainan, of which this man was the chairman. And you figured out that it perhaps was a repatriation flight. I don't know where it was going because it looked like it was going to join the Atlantic track, or maybe it was just doing a weird routing somewhere. I don't know. But first of all, I didn't know they had a VIP 787 in their fleet. There aren't that many. So that was kind of neat to see. But yeah, quite a strange story all around for a troubled company. I'm not sure what the future holds for them, but they've, as you said, accrued a staggering amount of debt to aggressively grow not just their airline interests, but also their airport handling and catering, all that stuff.
Catering.
And airports themselves. So be very interesting to see.
I mean, I wish them well, but it's true that I think Airbus and Boeing are a bit hitchy about will they actually take the deliveries and will they actually pay. Well, we'll see. Another thing that really also got it started that we talked about it, you and me, on messages quite a lot, was this very interesting study by OAG about the top 10 revenue routes last year. I mean, from fiscal years from April 2017 to March 2018. I was just going to spell the 10 routes that are most profitable. It's a study that's well done. Of course, the numbers are probably not exact because they don't have access to the books of the airlines, and that's just revenue. But it's interesting because, so I'm just going to start with the 10th one. So Singapore Airlines, Sydney to Singapore, then Air Canada, Toronto to Vancouver, Qatar Airways, Heathrow to Doha, then Cathay Pacific, Hong Kong to Heathrow, United, San Francisco to New York, LAX to Kennedy, Singapore Airline, Heathrow to Singapore, Emirates, Heathrow to Dubai, Qantas, Melbourne to Sydney, and the first and the most profitable route in the world, apparently, BA Kennedy to Heathrow.
Surprising.
5 routes there have the term Heathrow. So Heathrow is really a very profitable place to be going to.
It's funny, isn't it? Because of all the APD and stuff and the limited slots. But I wonder if it's they get some special deal on their landing fees.
I don't know. I don't know. It's the total revenue for that route surpasses, according to that study,
That's
$1
extraordinary.
billion a year. That's extraordinary, which actually tells me two things. First, I mean, we know that the routes from Heathrow are very expensive. Flying from Heathrow, if you don't live in the UK, guys, you don't realize how expensive it is to buy a ticket, which is why sometimes Alex and myself try to find routes like I just did starting from Paris, because it is very expensive. And especially the routes going to the east coast of the US are staggeringly expensive. And so, of course, that plays into that. But that means that maybe, I'm doing conspiracy theory here, maybe BA doesn't really want a third runway because it allows them to keep that price super high. As long as they don't have competition, it's good for them.
They've been vehemently against it because, and they're using the whole we're not paying for it line. But that's a very interesting theory. I think there might be some credibility there.
That route is 6% of BA's total revenue in 2017. That's amazing.
Given how many places they fly.
Interestingly, though, the same guys broke that down by revenue per hours flown. And in that case, the highest is actually Heathrow to Dubai by Emirates, which seems to be very, very profitable as well, which explains why we have like 25 billion flights a day from all the airports in the UK to Dubai. And they all because people, when they don't live in the UK, they might not realize that. But every time I fly Emirates, these planes every single one is full. It's actually very profitable. It's not about subsidies, guys. It's just people just fly to Dubai and then maybe elsewhere. But
yeah, it's those, and they did a really good job with this study by explaining the metrics and the methodology. It's well worth digging into.
Yeah. So to my trip, I'm going to try not to do 2 hours. So what I might be doing is only part of my trip in this episode and the second part of the next one. So not to bore you to death, because I knew that last time when I spoke about Lufthansa, I spoke for, I think, 25 minutes in a row and Alex was getting asleep. And it's the morning. I have to respect his, he just woke up. So after I did that little thing, meeting the 320 pilot who sells seats and olive oil to BA and etc., I went to Paris. I'll talk about Paris at the very end with Alex. What do we think about Charles de Gaulle? And I flew KLM. So I arrived in Paris. I had built myself, since it were separate tickets, of course, BA and the rest of the trip, lots of time. I had to switch terminal. That was very quickly. I'll explain that at the end as well of the show. And I have only 50 minutes in Amsterdam. So I'm doing Paris, Amsterdam, and then KLM to Manila, which stops in Taipei. And so 50 minutes is okay in Amsterdam because now, and thank you, Alex, for telling me that, security, because I hadn't flown in Amsterdam since 2011, actually. And back then, security were still mostly at the gates. Now you don't have intra-security. So at least I knew I just had to run and I'd be fine. But that was 50 minutes. Only that, I'm looking at the plane coming in on one of my flight trackers. And I'm like, it's late and it's late and it's late. And I ended up, to make the story short, with about 18 minutes of time in Amsterdam, which to me, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to miss the plane. The service to Manila is not like the ones we just mentioned in the top 10 routes. So it's not going to be like every 2 hours. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to miss a day, whatever. So I entered the aircraft at 7:38, which will come also in a minute too. And the highlight there was the crew. There was one guy, I arrive, he doesn't know me. And I tell him, I vocalize him like, guys, I have another flight. And I say, it's flight KLM 107. Is it 107? And I'm not finishing the sentence, service to Taipei. I'm like, yeah. So the guy knew by heart which service it was. And he says, yeah, it's departs in whichever it was, maybe at that point, an hour and 20 minutes, something. And he looks at me and says, And I said, do you think I'm going to have time? He say, look, you should be having time because the flight is actually very short, but I'll make sure to let the people know on the ground. That was, in terms, he didn't know me. I hadn't even seated yet, so he couldn't even know which passenger I was if he had read the manifest, for instance. So that was great service. I appreciate that a lot. And indeed, I made the flight. I had to run like crazy in Amsterdam airport. Supposedly, there's a fast track lane for people. We have these kind of delays when you have to go through passport control because, I'm going from intra-Schengen, Paris and Amsterdam to external. I didn't see it, but since it was an e-gate, I scanned my passport very fast and I arrived. I was sweaty as hell, but I made it. So thank him. Because I'm not as good as Alex, I don't remember his name. I should have, but he was very, very good and I appreciate that. I was very happy for that first flight to actually fly a 737-800 because we never do that in Europe, right? It's only 320s. I will still say, and Alex, maybe you can back me or challenge me on that, yeah, I was happy to fly it. It was an old one, maybe 12 years old or something, but I mean, old, it was okay. But clearly, and I see why people complain more about space in the US than they do in Europe, it's narrower than the 320s. And only the seats, because by definition, you have to put the same 3.3 in a slightly narrower tube, a bit narrower, but that's fine. But especially I find that the overhead bins, and I know that in the new version of the 737, they kind of corrected that, are very narrow. And that created a lot of turmoil for the poor flight attendants trying to play Tetris and put everybody's stuff on there. And that's something that I will say probably the 320 overhead bins are a bit smarter because they just open, there are these blocks that open, whereas the 737 have these drop downs.
Yeah, it definitely feels, especially with the overhead bins, and like you say, they've paid a lot of attention to that on the newer ones. But yeah, it doesn't feel as spacious. I mean, it's not like, wow, it's like, so much room for activities in here on a 320. It's not, but it definitely, just the way it's laid out. And I think if you don't have, what's Boeing's lighting system called? I can't remember what it's called, but they've got this neat lighting system, which is optional, that actually makes the cabin feel much more spacious. KLM don't have that. And so you do feel, with those darker seats, it all feels a little bit more claustrophobic.
Yeah, and I will say that's the thing, though. Thank you for, again, you reading my mind. And that's the thing I was not... there's two things. I don't like the color blue, and I'll come to that in a minute when I talk about my second flight. But the fact that they chose this blue almost everywhere, because it's KLM's color, I think it ages not as well as white, for instance. I know that a lot of people criticize that all European airlines just have like plain white everywhere, but at least it feels a bit airy, and you cannot really tell the age of an aircraft because they all look the same.
Yeah.
Whereas that blue, it clearly dates. You can say, yeah, that was a design that they used to do in the 90s. Not anymore. And that enters your mind as like, it's an old aircraft. And actually, it was not that old. Probably just the design is old, and they kept doing it for quite a while. So that's not something I did enjoy, to be really honest with you. The one thing, though, I just said quite old aircraft, every single seat, they had power.
Wow, that's unusual.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I really enjoyed that, actually. But the funny thing is, when we were taking off, they said on the PA, please, everybody remove everything from power. I was like, do they need a power to take off? Anyway, so the funny bit here is that I had put because I did to fly KLM, Air France was later, and also Delta. So I had my booking code and my name in all the three apps. And it's really funny how they try to compete with each other to tell you what is the next bit of your trip. I really thought that KLM would give me the KLM information, Delta the Delta information, and Air France the Air France information. But since it's one single ticket, they all were notifying me. And actually, pretty cool.
No,
but I didn't,
cool.
to the point that I could actually have checked in on 3 of them.
Really?
Yeah. The ones I did with one, then of course it stopped working on the other because, I guess the system would tell that I'm actually already checked in. But I could have checked in with the Delta app in Paris to my Paris to Amsterdam. It was possible.
Wow.
It's amazing.
That is
I
cool.
did KLM because I wanted to try KLM app, which you also said it's pretty good, actually.
It is good. Yeah. There's a couple of good features which I was really impressed with. But yeah, I had never thought about. I've had that with American Airlines and BA. I haven't tried Cathay with BA, or have I? I can't remember. But the interoperability is mixed at best.
I wasn't able to verify everything because obviously once I had checked in with one, I couldn't do with the others. But they kept, sending me the update. This is your gate. I'm like, oh, wow. So I received my gate in Amsterdam when I was running like a madman on TripIt, TripCase, everything, plus KLM, plus Air France, plus Delta, F34. Like, yeah, I know, guys.
At least they were all saying the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you would be like freaking out. One other thing that you would have loved, because we complain about that sometimes, they actually say, the PA says, after the safety video, they say, you will need to use headphones if your device produces sound.
Oh, thank goodness. Please, all airlines follow suit.
Yeah, right. So the second flight, 777, I think it was 200, not a 300. It was good. So it's also not a newer aircraft. It's a 222 configuration. It's similar actually to what United might have on bigger flight, but especially Qatar 330s have. You don't have all aisle access. It's a lie flat. The very positive thing is that Dutch people are tall.
Yeah.
So the seats Qatar are horrifyingly squeezy. You cannot turn when you're sleeping. I'm not talking the 350. I'm not talking the 380. I'm really talking the 330, which they use are medium routes, which is really not a great seat on Qatar. So on this one, it's not only very long. When I was in full lie flight, I could actually just not touch the end of it. So that's actually pretty cool. But also quite large. I'm not a large person per se, but I'm tall. That bit was actually
That's
comfortable.
good.
For a 222, which is now we're spoiled, Alex and myself, because we've been to Cathay and even BA, which is a bit awkward, but at least you have more privacy. With those, to be honest, it's more than satisfying.
Yeah.
It's maybe if you have to pay full price, and if the price is similar to something that has full AL access, will I choose KLM? No. But at least I didn't feel completely squeezed, which some airlines, they tell you, oh, of course you have full live flight. And the live flight is so tiny that you don't actually have live flight, which, by the way, was my experience with Delta much later on in my trip. The rest of the experience, man, there was one standout crew. She didn't not only stand out because she was great, but she stood out because she was taller than me, man.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's quite a thing.
Yeah, she was amazing. So that, I was happy because of someone like that. But the rest of the experience, I don't know, man. They give you this amenity kit, which is not bad, but has nothing in it. Like literally nothing. As a pair of socks and an eye mask and a comb, and that's pretty much it. Why would you give me then? Don't give me an actual amenity kit. Put the stuff in the lavatories.
Yeah,
just give me an eye mask. And then there was a dinner and there was a breakfast before landing at Taipei. I didn't take the breakfast because I knew that then I would take Taipei to Manila, which is only 2.5 hours. The first flight is about 13 hours. So I took dinner because I didn't have much to eat before that. I was pacing myself.
Yeah.
Man, I took I shouldn't have, but I took the beef. Worst.beef.ever. I've never eaten something so disgusting than this. Now, honestly, it was like a shoe, so it was impossible to eat, and the taste was bad. It was really, I didn't finish it, obviously. I didn't tell anything because I didn't want to be that entitled ass, of course, but it was really, really bad. And I was like, okay, so I'm departing from Amsterdam, which is your home base. You don't even have the excuse of, oh, you have to deal with whatever catering that there is in whichever city. It's really bad.
That's frustrating.
That is really sad. And you know what? On the follow-up flight, so again, same aircraft, different crew. So you arrive in Taipei, they say, everybody out, Taiwanese regulation, you cannot stay in, you have to take everything. If you forget everything, consider it lost. You're like, okay, guys, I'm taking everything. Although it's the same seat, whatever, when you come back. That bit, I had a different crew, and I'm sure they balance the crews. Once they do 13 hours, they stay there, and then the other one does just a bit to Manila, and then they switch again, or something. There must be something to keep within the regulations. There was a small lunch, and there was pasta, and this time I said no beef. I was like,
yeah, you've learned that lesson.
But that pasta was probably one of the best I ever eaten. But maybe because it was from Taiwan, I don't know. But that pasta was simple pasta, pesto pasta, nothing really. But honestly, one of the most delicious pastas I've ever eaten in a flight. So really, I don't know if I was unlucky or whatever. But I mean, just for that, I felt like, no. Something for Mastication Nation. We'll talk about that beef
Yeah, we
one
need
day.
to go back and do a redux.
So a few other things about that flight, and I'll do the rest in the next episode. A few other things about that flight is because I think Alex and I were very much vocal about that as well. We both said that always KLM has and is very forward-thinking when it comes to use of social media.
They're the champions.
Well, I tried because, again, I was in Paris, about to maybe miss the flight. I said, okay, what do I do? Oh, well, they're very good at Messenger and Twitter DMs, whatever. So I sent them a Twitter DM and a Facebook message just saying, okay, and I was very proactive. I looked at what people were doing. Name, e-ticket number, a booking reference, everything. So they cannot go back and say, oh, we don't know if it's really you, whatever.
Yeah.
And well, the only thing they were sending me is like, oh, well, if you lose your flight, you'll be automatically rebooked. That was the only message I got from Twitter DM. So I'm like, and you remember you were even telling me, it sounds like it's a robot that wrote it, which probably is.
Yeah.
And you're like, at least mark it as a robot, they'll be less frustrated.
Yeah.
But I'm like, And then on Facebook Messenger, they replied 9 hours after I sent a message.
Oh, no.
at least the Twitter DM was like an hour. So by the time I was in Amsterdam, I was able to read it, which was not very helpful. So I'm going to backtrack a bit of their champion. I don't know if maybe they're using way too many robots.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that, I did worry how that was going to scale. And it sounds like it's been inelegant at best.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
frustrating.
Yeah. Even if it's a robot, make it say something like, is there anything else I should help you with?
Yeah.
A follow-up message.
And then if it doesn't understand, then you get connected to a human being.
Yeah, and it didn't. You remember, I even sent you the screenshot. The first thing I got was, how likely are you to recommend KLM to a friend?
Oh.
I was like, no, nothing.
Yeah.
You just gave me like a template answer. I'm not going to recommend anything to anyone, right?
Before you've even finished the conversation, as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, it's a bit dire. So KLM, so both. So I'm not going to dwell on it, but I'm not sure I would fly them again. And there's nothing against KLM. I'll talk about the other flight in the next show, guys. Same group. Air France was much better. The irony is Air France is losing money and KLM is not. So maybe actually KLM has something right, but man.
Yeah, very possibly.
But you know what? So I was telling you, is KLM better than United?
Oof.
You know what? It's close, actually.
It's close. Oh,
it's horrible
God.
to say it, but it's... I really felt I was in an American airline, and the color blue. Do you like blue seats yourself? Because in the US, everybody has blue seats. No, Delta has blue seats.
A lot of people do, and BA have got they've moved away from the blue seats, haven't they? They're all black now. But
because
yeah,
blue
you're right.
for me tells me, I don't know. It doesn't age well.
No.
And I think it becomes. It's not. I get it why they do it, because it becomes dirty. Dark blue gets maybe not as dirty as beige or whatever, but it just doesn't. No, for me, it doesn't age well, and it gives me, unlike Lufthansa's livery, it doesn't give me a premium. So KLM seats are blue, Air France seats are blue, Delta seats are blue, everybody's blue, and I think bluish doesn't
I agree.
Exudes premium.
It shows the wear and tear a lot faster.
Yeah, I don't like it. So, anyway, guys, I'll come to the next bit of the flight in the next episode, because we need to move on to actually Charles de Gaulle. So how do you like Charles de Gaulle, Alex?
When anybody says I'm going to Paris and I'm going to fly, I spend at least an hour trying to dissuade them from doing it. I mean, it's not one failing. It's just so many things coming together to make for a horrendous experience. Where it is relative to the city, how one gets from the airport to the city. Before you even get to the airport, you're in a bad mood. Because it's a pain in the ass to get to the city or from the city.
That's their worst. That's probably their worst bit.
I think so.
The French are so good. France is so good at creating industrial projects. They have the high-speed train. They have one of the first one. They have the entire country has nuclear power plants. I mean, we can dislike nuclear power plants, but when they set their minds to create something, they do something.
And they do it well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why it's such a successful country. But for that, it seems that the form prevailed over function.
Yeah.
And you have this airport that is super big, a bit out of Paris, but has no real link to get to the city. I mean, you have like an RER, which is like a regional train. And then you have, the highways backed up all the time. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And I think it's like so many older airports, be it in Europe or North America, where it started as an airfield in the 40s or 50s, and it's just grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. That is what it is, but the lack of a high speed or convenient or anything airport express is just an infuriating thing. And then the airport itself is like something else. I can't. Yeah.
So just to add on that, because I think we even said it in maybe 10, 15 episodes ago, they are planning to actually put finally a high-speed train that goes from Paris to the center. Actually, there is a high-speed train station next, but it doesn't go to Paris. It goes anywhere in France, so that's great if you want to go to Toulouse or whatever.
Which I've done. Yeah, and you're right. It's very convenient. I came up from the south of France, and you get right there, and you're there at the airport, and it's great, but you can't get to Paris.
Go to Paris! It's crazy.
It's a TGV line, so it's, yeah.
Yeah. So they are planning to build one. I'm not holding my breath, but I mean, I hope they do it. Now, there's a very different experience when you are layovering in Paris and when you are actually going as an origin or destination airport, which we just mentioned. And also, and we'll start with the first one, there's a very different experience whether you're T1, whether you're T2. There's also a T3, which is for low cost. We've never been to it, so we're not going to address it today. T1 is the oldest one. What do you think about T1? Is this like weird shape thing?
Yeah, it's like they were trying to be very space age in like the 60s.
Exactly.
You know?
That's it.
There's all these
Form of function.
Yeah. There's like it's like something out of the Jetsons. You have all of these. Are they escalators or are they travel like in like what do they think?
They don't even go straight. At some point, they go horizontal, then they go a little bit down, then they go up because I think they go under the road or something.
Yeah.
So it's really, guys, if you've never been, you're on this people mover thing, escalator, flat escalator-ish for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can walk on it and go much faster. And literally, so imagine it's like a big round thing. You get from one of the entrance and then you get on one of these escalators and you just get. And then you get to the actual terminal, which is tiny.
It is.
Compared to today's, other airports, there's no place for nothing.
There's not, you're right. And you're sort of belched out into this weird warehouse, tiny warehouse where you're supposed to get your taxi or meet your driver or whatever. And it's, you come from like this, what was clearly a vision of the future when they were building it with this dome of intersecting travelators. And you're like, you look around going, what the hell is this? This is, again, as you say, this is massively form over function.
I mean, it's great for pictures because that Jetson style is great. I love it. I mean,
but if you're in a hurry.
Exactly. I admire of architecture. It's great. And you should, guys, see it once in your life. But it's really not very practical. Let's be honest with you.
Not at all.
So now Terminal 2, it's much bigger. Terminal 2 is A, B, C, D, E, F.
Yes.
Strangely enough, E is actually the latest one in the flagship, if you want. So I'm just going to give you one single piece of advice. First of all, if you need to transfer from 1 to A, it's a bit of a pain. But if you need to transfer between, because, it's A, B, C, D, you say, oh, they must be next to each other. And they are to a certain extent. But if you remember my trip report when my flight was canceled from Helsinki, had to fly with Cathay Pacific from Paris to Hong Kong. And I took this bus, which this is the only way to transfer airside. This bus takes between 45 and an hour and a half to connect you because it only goes, I think, clockwise. So if you're at, I don't know, B and you need to go to A, or maybe I'm wrong here, it just goes all the others before you reach the one you want, which is completely stupid.
Yes.
So my one piece of advice, if you ever have a layover, and if you're lucky enough to have either European passport, American, so basically if you have a visa-free entrance to France or Schengen, obviously, well, simply go out and walk. And I did that this time, which is, I'll talk about it in the next episode. But when I did that was actually fast because then I had to go from F to A or something like that. It took me 12 minutes walking outside and it's fine. You go out, customs and everything was pretty okay. It's not the greatest, but it's okay. And you actually can make your flight. If you have to wait for that bus, which is also very hard to find because you have to go downstairs and it's badly written, you're effed.
Yeah.
So my advice, if you're lucky, again, sadly, if you don't have a passport that allows you to get in, that's a problem. But if you can, I think that in 9 cases out of 10, get out, walk, get back in. Honestly, guys, do that.
That type of insight is gold because you would, as you say, you get so frustrated trying to take that bus when you realize you could do it in about 10% of the time if you just leave. I mean, going through immigration never sounds like the path of least resistance, but in this instance, it actually is.
It does. And you know what? That actually changed my feeling about Charles de Gaulle because I said, okay, if I do that, then layovers at Charles de Gaulle become more acceptable than before. Because before I was like, every single time I'm going to miss my flight. And the bus was never showing up. There's no like a time. You don't know where it just says every 40 minutes. And you're like, am I at the very beginning of the 40 minutes or did I arrive? You have it's really, the UX of that airport doesn't make sense.
No.
So a few more things. So the 2E is the one you might know because that's a long haul one. That's a flagship for Air France. It's this oblong tube, a little bit like maybe Bangkok or somewhat like Dubai. It's really nice. It's airy. I like that. I didn't like it in 2004 because part of it just, they had just built it and just like crashed and like went down. But that bit, I would say it's like form meets function. Yeah. It's not only pretty beautiful, but it also kind of works as an airport. So that 2E is in itself, it's okay. The rest of the experience of Charles de Gaulle is hit and miss, guy. That's the biggest thing you have to remember. It's hit and miss because you never know where you're going to get. Sometimes security is great. Sometimes security doesn't exist. It's just slow. The morning I was there, I literally waited 35 minutes for actually it's just someone to show up at security.
That's extraordinary.
Exactly, because people didn't have started their day because maybe of union hours or something.
Right.
And sometimes they don't care, but sometimes as well they cut corners. For instance, same morning, I go through security. Like all the modern airports now, you have like this duty-free area before you actually get into
the terminal. Yeah.
They had open security, but not a duty-free. So basically, we were locked in between. You're like, what?
Oh, that's so bad.
Where actually then, I can like French people is that one guy sees us say, oh, come my way, and basically opened the staff-only door and made us walk all the way for the two passengers. So, exactly. So they're not always like uptight as some other airports might be. They will do the effort. So again, it's hit and miss. Sometimes I love it. Oh yeah, I like France and I like the food because there's lots of food options. Sometimes I'm like, what the hell is going on in this airport?
Yeah.
I think that the only airy part, again, is 2E. All the other terminals are a bit cramped. There can be they're not the best experience, but again, it's one of the big airports of this world. So you cannot miss it. You have to do it once in your life, guys. I'm sorry.
And it really is. One of the things that struck me the last time I flew out of Charles de Gaulle is how big it is physically as an airfield.
Huge.
Like you taxi and you taxi
Forever.
and you taxi and you taxi. And are we driving to wherever we're going? This is incredible. It's like Amsterdam. I mean, Amsterdam, you're kind of prepared for it, but you're sort of meandering out of taxiways and past other terminals and through cargo areas and maintenance areas going, where are we going?
Actually, it's great for the views. And when you land or when you take off, guys, just take a look. There's room. They have 4 runways. They could be 8 easily. Yeah. There's nothing around it.
There's nothing around it.
In that sense, it's good planning, like Istanbul we mentioned earlier, but just do the freaking link to go there. I was saying until recently, it's the worst airport in the Western Hemisphere, and a lot of people say that. Is that still the case for me? I'm not sure, because now I think that Frankfurt has edged it.
Oh, yeah.
Because of my past experiences. But it's huge. I don't know if they plan to do another runway, because it doesn't feel as busy. I mean, it's busy. It's like 70 million passengers a year, but it feels... The airfield seems empty with 70 million passengers here, so you can have like 120 without even adding another runway. It's insane, actually.
That is insane.
For lovers, for AV geeks, I never know. 2F as one very cool feature. They have these expansions with all the gates they all windows. Everything is window. That's great because you can see the apron. They actually call these things, that's so French, peninsulas.
Yeah, peninsulas. Very romantic.
So French. Vive la France. The cool thing from there is you're so close to, usually in 2F you have 320s, 390s, etc. But you're very, very, very close. You can see everything. You can see the life of an airport, people coming out, deplaning, etc. That is really cool. You have a great view as well if you have access to the Air France lounge, because it's actually not underground, but almost on the ground floor of the airport. So you see the airplanes from below, and they're very close to the gates. That is actually very cool. So for AV geeks like you and me, Alex, it's a good airport for that.
Nice.
There you go.
Redeeming feature.
Yeah, redeeming. Guys, if you have any comments about Charles de Gaulle, any bad experience, or you love it to death, just let us know. Hate us on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you want. Email. I had so many other shout outs, and the rest of the trip, plus Alex Alaska trip, comes in the next episode. I cannot wait for that one. That will be the first 20 minutes of our show next time. Are you flying anywhere?
No.
Boston, no?
Oh, yes. Well, thank you. I'm flying to Boston. I'm doing JetBlue Mint again. I'm looking forward to that. So, yeah, I do that on Thursday night.
You're doing Mint? Oh, you're so lucky.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think they might be on a reconfigured one as well, which they've slightly spruced up, but I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, I'm so jealous now. So, okay, we'll have to talk about Alaska and Mint in the next episode. As for me, I might travel. Actually, I said I wouldn't, but I might travel, but that will be after the recording of the next episode, because that will be just after mid-August. So until then, everybody, happy travels.
Safe travels, guys.